And we will lead from now. So, tū taua mai I runga, tū taua mai I rara, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho, kia tau mai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, umie, uie, tai kie. Thank you. And we have apologies today from Councillor Wright and Councillor Mawson. Could I have a mover? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Do we have conflicts of interest today?
I have a conflict of interest for item number reports from the Future Napier Committee, review of the gambling venues policy.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue.
I've already declared the same.
Okay, so Councillor Crown, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Price for the same paper. Thanking you. And we do have some presentations in our public forum today. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Tamatea Intermediate School. And we have the principal, Joanna Smith, so welcome. And all of the heads and deputies here, so pleasure to have you here. Zach Cadence, is that Cadence the correct pronunciation? Israel and Taya, right. So welcome, and we'll hand over for your presentation.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Joe Smith tōku ingoa no Ahaduri ahau ko Oe te Tumuaki o Te Kurataka Wainga o Tamatea. Thank you for inviting us here today, and thank you for giving Napier the opportunity to hear the voice of youth. I'm in the very privileged position to be able to work with young people every day, and what they can come up with is quite incredible. See, they don't have a lot of noise around them. They have a pure view, and they aren't bogged down by all the no's that some of us adults have received as we've tried things throughout the years. So they're ambitious, and they're creative, and they're innovative, and they've got a pretty powerful message after speaking with their peers, and they do a really good job at this, so I'm going to hand it over to them.
Kia ora, ko Zach tōku ingoa no Ahuriri ahau.
Ko Cadence tōku ingoa no Ahuriri ahau.
Ko Israel tōku ingoa no Ahuriri ahau.
Ko Taya tōku ingoa no Ahuriri ahau. Tēnā koutou. Thank you for inviting us here today. We would first like to acknowledge and thank the Mayor, Kirsten Wise, and the Napier City Councillors. It's an honour to be here, and we appreciate the opportunity to have a voice. Thank you also for allowing us to join the conversation about building a kinder and child-friendly Napier. When we were first given this question, we gathered the thoughts of young people from our community and beyond. There are many amazing opportunities for young people in Napier, but there are always chances to improve. Today, our community will share its ideas with you.
Hawke's Bay, where the heavenly sun lies upon this once sunken city, with the vintage age of Art Deco and the home to the prestigious wine lay in its resting state. The city we live in, and it's full of remarkable sights and locations. However, recently we have surveyed the children of Hawke's Bay to discover some ugly truths about our wonderful city.
I love living in Hawke's Bay because all of my family's there.
The best thing about Hawke's Bay is the food.
What I love about Hawke's Bay is the hot chicken and chips, the cold drinks, and plenty of beaches to go to.
We love fishing here.
The best thing about Hawke's Bay is the mountain trails and tracks.
I love living in Hawke's Bay because we have an amazing community.
Carry on.
and our schooling system is amazing.
The thing I love most about Hawke's Bay is the beautiful flowers on the Marine Parade and the other things down there. It's really nice.
This is Napier Pump Track, where scooters, bikes and skateboards can all come and have a good time.
Children love playing on this amazing playground.
The one thing I really love about Hawke's Bay is all the nice people that come around and treat you nicely.
There are so many fun opportunities for kids, such as this base game.
The slide is pretty fun.
The slide's fun?
This is fun up here.
It's fun. That's cool.
Hawke's Bay's got the fattest ice cream and the coldest fins.
The most kid-friendly thing is all the friendly faces, because it's kind of a small town, everybody, you know quite a lot of people, and there's always somebody to go to.
We like everything. The happy is down.
Although the next generation's future is far from bright, the students of the Napier community agree that they constantly lack the feeling of safety. The children feel Napier has evolved into a more grown-up state and feel as if they have been forced to grow up more hurriedly. Following this is some sad but true stories about tamariki not feeling safe in our own community.
After every Saturday sports game, I'd go to the Maria shopping centre to grab a treat. I used to love going to that place. Now the experiences don't feel so joyous. I feel like I'd rather go somewhere else. It's always filled with unfamiliar faces that don't look too friendly. Only it feels more safe.
Me and my friends used to like to come to Burger King a lot, but now we'll get too intimidated because of the gang people that like to hang around there.
The sounds still ring through my ears. The sudden sense of fear still tingles in my body. Sunday, 1 o'clock. Me and Dad were getting lunch when the gunfire erupted. I froze. I couldn't move. The shots were as loud as bombs. They rung through my ears. Till this day, Taradell still gives me chills.
Anxiety floods my body as I see the all too familiar signs stating Kennedy Road in white shiny lettering. As I'm about to turn onto the street, I stop, remembering the many stories and experiences my friends have told me about. I take a deep breath before I continue to turn the corner leading me onto the street. I walk towards the direction of my school, my head automatically turning behind me every few seconds to keep watch of who's around me. I stop walking for a few seconds to change the music blasting through my headphones. The man who's been walking across the road from me suddenly stops in his tracks and crosses the road. He starts walking to where I'm standing. I find this a bit weird, so I walk again, this time picking up my pace. He gets a bit too close for comfort, so I speed walk until I get to school. I sigh in relief as I see the familiar orange flags waving in the wind. The man turns around. Maybe I'll start getting rides from one of my friends from now on.
We need to be able to shop here without feeling intimidated. We need to be able to use our public restrooms without smelling marijuana. We need to be able to scooter here knowing that our scooter is safe and not going to be stolen.
This playground should be safe for me and all my friends, and we should not have to see any fights while we play.
Yes, there are negatives, but as the old saying goes, there's always room for improvement. I believe that if we work together and work hard enough, I think we can achieve our goal of making Napier a safe place for everyone. We got inputs from people around the community asking what the perfect Napier would look like.
I think that we should make more crossings in Napier for kids to cross, and so they don't get run over or anything bad will happen. To make Napier a better place, I think we should put more kid-friendly things like playgrounds and stuff around Napier to stop kids breaking into cars and just roaming.
I think we should stop underage drinking because drinking isn't really healthy for you and can ruin your life.
We should have more rubbish bins, especially ones with lid, to stop the litter flying out. And the more rubbish bins means people should stop throwing glass like on the roads and put them in the actual rubbish bins, because glass on roads or on footpaths can be a real danger and you can get hurt.
It's because it doesn't give us more oxygen. If you cut down trees, no oxygen, and if there's more trees, we have a lot of oxygen.
Well-lit areas so I can feel safe when I'm walking at night.
No more game catches in public or in town.
There should be more family-friendly activities in the weekend. More pools because the waterways are dangerous.
Napier would feel more safe if there's more police.
Napier would feel more safe if there was less gangs.
Napier would feel safe if there was less drug use.
Napier would feel more safe if there were less threats.
No smoking in public places, it's bad for children's health.
I think we should have more skate parks for kids under 16 for more entertainment on the weekends.
I would like to feel more safe when walking around my streets.
Less sewage in our waterways, please.
Safer roads mean less death on the highways.
More child-friendly playgrounds, please.
Repairing the pathways and making them more safe.
I think Napier would be a far more safer place if there was more security people around.
I think if there was less sewage in the waterways, we'd feel safer swimming.
I think Napier would be more safe if we had more rubbish bins.
I think Napier would be a far safer place if there was more security in and around town.
Napier could be more safe if we could keep children doing activities.
Less gang violence.
Ahaduri is my Taradell wildlife. I need to feel safe.
Wow, that was awesome. I think we've got some future youth councillors sitting in front of us today. Absolutely well done. I will just open up to the councillors in case anyone has any questions or anything that they would like to say. Councillor Bogue.
Kia ora, and thank you so much for that fabulous presentation. It was great and lots of things for us to think about. Next year we have our long-term plan, which is our major document which will see us through the next 10 years, and we ask for submissions and ideas and suggestions and input into that from the community, and I'm hoping that you will have a chance to do that next year. It is a document that's got a whole lot of things in that you may or may not know about, but we would appreciate, I'm sure, the opportunity to hear your wishes and desires and thoughts about how we can go forward for the next 10 years. So look forward to seeing you then.
Okay, if there's no further questions from councillors, yes, I'll just reiterate Councillor Bogue's comments about our long-term plan, and we have actually started talking to our community already this year as we prepare to go out and formally consult next year, and certainly a lot of the things that you've spoken to us about today in terms of safety and extra activities for our tamariki and rangatahi, they're coming through quite strong from a lot of the people we're talking to. So it would be fantastic to receive a submission from yourselves, and we can certainly, if you need any assistance with that, provide you with a little bit of guidance, but we'd love to have that. Thank you very much for taking time. Actually, have you finished for the school year?
We finished today.
It's your last day?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming to spend some time with us on your last day. And I wish you lots of fun in your holidays and a really Merry Christmas with your whānau. So thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
And just before we part, I'd just like to say we're absolutely honoured to be given this opportunity to make change for our future generations. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Never mind.
Very good. Right.
Run for it.
I think Richard McGrath may have a small gift for you, actually.
We're special.
I'm guessing you're not very good at deciding which one are you, so you might have both.
That's not a problem. Possibly.
Possibly. Hey guys, thanks for coming and talking to us today. Very informative. And let's see you down.
Thank you very much. You too.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys in the future, I'm sure. One of you those chains up. I'm hoping it's the cover that hit the ground once.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy the summer. Stay safe.
And next up in our public forum, we have Teresa O'Brien, and do we also have Bees and Fish coming up to co-present? So welcome.
O atamari e koutou. Tēnei te mihi nui ki a koutou I te rangi nei. I think I know everybody in the room. So Teresa O'Brien, and it's an honour for us to be here today to share with you some of the outcomes, learnings and feedback on the Māori movement whānau transformation program. We were here, I think, maybe 6 months ago, where we submitted a proposal and boldly invited the council to back us, which you did. So we're very excited today to sit here and share with you some of the amazing outcomes on what we've achieved so far in the halfway point of the whānau transformation program. So I have with me here in person this time Ngāri Ngō Te Wati, and we also have Joseph Rārere, who is a participant of whānau transformation, who will be sharing. Collectively we will be presenting to you this morning, but I'd like to take this time to hand over to Ngāri Ngō, and he will share with you about the program.
Tēnā koe tisi. Mihi ana ki tō tātou nei whare. Tuatahi mai, whakahoki atu ana te mana ki ngā tangata whenua tēnei takiwa o Ahuriri, Kahungunui whānui, ngā te pārau, me ngā mana e tui atu ana I ngā whakapapa ki koni. O tira ki tēnei whare atu nei, mihi atu ana ki a koutou. Ngā kaitakiwa o te kaunihira, kia whita atu ana, te mōkura, ki roto I ngā mahi e haumaruti atu ana ki tēnei takiwa no reira nei ka mihi atu ana ki a koutou. Kia ora everybody, my name is Ngāri no Te Wati, and I hail from the tribes of Tauranga Moana and Waikato. Flew down here from Auckland last night to come and present to you, so it's awesome to be here, a tinana in the physical, to present to you today. And this is just a really small reflection of our halfway mark. And this is cohort 1 in our place-based wānanga series for whānau transformation here in Maraenui. Oh, too much technology for me. So I'm just going to briefly just whiz over a couple of things just to make mention of what the kaupapa is all about. Te Whare Aio is a health and wellbeing program that allows us to be able to transition our people, the Māori people in particular, and bring them into a true source of light, which is under a wānanga or an ancient wānanga practice called aiotanga. Aiotanga is about aligning ourselves to our whakapapa line. And whakapapa to our people means everything. So the genealogy line ensures us to be able to ensure that we're plugging into the right line. The effects of colonisation has somewhat dismantled that whakapapa line for the majority of our Māori people. Therefore, we are getting some pretty horrendous stats out there when it comes to suicide, our prison rates, mental illness, the likes of violence, and it's been showcased throughout the country, not just here in Ahaduri, but right through the country. So as I was finishing off my master's, my mentor then came and sat with me and asked me what I was going to do with my thesis, and not just allow it to be knowledge that is passed down from ancestor to ancestor, but how to apply the knowledge. So Te Whare Aio was born, and I've been running on the ground for about 2 years now, 2.5 years, all over the country, but I've had a massive calling over here into the wing side of Maui, or the Te Matawa Maui, and for me it's been an honour to come into a space like Ahaduri Napier in particular, our first cohort into Marae Nui, to be able to implement the change. And our 10-week program finished a couple of, might have been a month ago now. And so we're just collating all of the evaluation and the stats from our whānau that entered into the realms of Te Whare Aio. And we're very, very happy to present to you where we're currently at with it. So our desired outcomes as individuals, it was my opportunity to be able to place some old traditions and bring forth ancient knowledge to allow our people to be able to explore in the realms of potential and really take them out of the intellectual part of our brain. And so we understand that in the ancient ways we were very spiritual people. But somewhere along the lines we sort of lost that in translation. And for us it was about maintaining the integrity of the knowledge and ensuring that it was safe kept. But for us in particular, when we're talking about each individual that came into to the forum or the wānanga space, it was clear that not everybody could identify who they are and where they came from. And a whakatauki of quite a generic one that our karaua used to say is, hea te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is people, it is people, it is people. And I remember him saying as we were growing up, every day, hea te mea nui o te ao, one of us would raise our hands and we would recite, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Until he got sick of us saying, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata, and would throw a stone at our head or something like that to wake us up, to allow us to come more into depth of what we can actually see in people. So it's not just talking about the physical human part of ourselves, we're forgetting the being part of ourselves. And for our people, if we're neglecting the spiritual element of ourselves, it's really hard for us to be able to come into an alignment and shapeshift our lives to align the true light of who we potentially could be. And so we're living in the shadows at the moment. And for Te Whare Aio, it's our job to come through and remove the shadows, shred the shadows. So what does that mean for each and every single individual that walks into the whare? It's about healing the intergenerational trauma. And this trauma has affected our people for hundreds of years, and allowing us now to be able to go to the seed and the cause of why we have the worst stats in this country and in motion in the world per capita. It's now apparent to us to be able to go to the light and the seed and be able to pluck that. And once we pluck the seed, we can then clear the canvas of everybody's space of the mind, so to speak, which we call the hinengaro, to allow us to be able to reinvent the new narrative, so to speak, of how we can implement change within our people. So on an individual basis, we had 40 people into the whare and 40 people walked out. And so for us, that was a huge sort of compliment to the whare. Because usually when you start a kaupapa, especially with Māori people, you might start with 40, but you end up with 5 or 10. The whare managed to hold all 40. That first image that we held, every single one of them stayed right to the end. So we had a massive turn of events where we would have Wednesday night wānanga here in Marae Nui at Te Oranga Pū Manawa, and random people would end up in our circle. And it was the calling of people just feeling that energy and wanting to be a part of something bigger. So allowing ourselves to be able to move into this concept, we'll move into the next chart, which speaks to the 10-week process of how we implemented change. And this one here, it's almost like a... Go over the next one. We started off with Te Kaupare Ariki, which is the level 1 wānanga, which some people in here have done. Then we went through 5 weeks of whānau therapy, where we would get together every Wednesday night and we would practice in meditation. Orokoro specialises in allowing ourselves to clean us from the inside out. Once we cleaned and cleared the canvas from the inside out, then we would go into ancient knowledge and withdraw wisdom from every single individual that was in the room. So 5 weeks of that, and then we went into a split change where the tāne went up into Te Mata Peak, and we had our own wānanga just for men, and for the women went over to Waimarama, and they only practiced all of the women deities in Hinerei. But we came back together, and then we initiated another final 5 weeks where I could take them into more wisdom and more challenges within knowledge. And then we went into the very final wānanga, which is called Te Kauorehua. Te Kauorehua is really tapping into the untapped potential within every single individual. Knowing that we were making changes within every single individual, it meant that I knew we were going to have a positive effect in whānau. So when these individuals went home, that was where the work was to be done. Not on the inside of where we were holding and hosting the wānanga. The mission and the challenge I gave to our people was the work is done inside of your homes. It's in the unseen spaces, the spaces where people can't see. How were you creating more values? How were you strategizing tikanga? How were you implementing this knowledge and applying it? It's not just things that you should know, but things that you need to apply. So those were the small little changes we made within the first sort of 10 weeks, and that was the structure that we used. Moving on to the outcomes, when we're looking at those poor stats that we alluded to, I just had a quick little squiz over the last 10 years. 309 people committed suicide in Hawke's Bay alone over the last 10 years. And so that's a pretty alarming stat. And then looking at the prison stats as well, where there's 660 people in the prisons, and that's for females and males. And then looking again, there's over nearly 1,500 call-outs for domestic violence per year. And so for me, it's important that I understand what those numbers are, because if I am going to contribute to reduce that, I have to then be very wise and smart in terms of how I'm going to implement that change inside of the whare. So it's not really having a core key focus on those particular stats, but how do I uplift my people? And how do I make these changes for my people so that they can become better men, better fathers, better mothers, better parents, better workers in their community, by creating a safer environment for their own tamariki? And how does this then generate into the next 7 generations to come? So we're not only making a holistic worldview just on the individual, but we're implementing change for the next 7 generations to come. But first of all, we had to really heal that upline and ensure that we were doing the right work in the right places. Psychotherapy, we know, does not work for our people. The systems that have been created for our people, we understand they do not work for our people. Individual one-on-one therapy does not work for our people. It's like mowing the lawns. You can't just weed the garden. You have to go right down to the source and the root of the problem where it started in the first place, which is where whānau transformation change happened. And so our very first program inside of the community of Marae Nui, we've made some drastic changes, and you can see Marae Nui has a very different vibration at the moment. I've brought in a really, really good mate of mine. He was just a tauira that came into the whare. And he'll talk a little bit about the whare from his own perspective, but along the way, him and I grew really, really close. I actually saw a light in this fella and the potential that he does bring to the floor and the forefront, where I found out he was a spelling bee champ at school, which hella surprised me. And just seeing the intelligence of this man. This man is creating movement, not within his own community, in his own whānau, and the Mongol mob as well, but seeing the light that this man carries around the community, it's massive. I never saw that light when I first met him, but when he's come out of the whānau transformation kaupapa, he's probably my biggest advocate. And if we can make small little changes one by one, then we're slowly changing the world. And if we can start here in a small community like Marae Nui, we know that we're on target. We're on the right point. So this is just, there's some kōrero in here that we presented in the first presentation. But I really want to just hand over the mic to Joseph here, and just allow him to introduce himself, and just to share a few words of how the whānau transformation of Te Whareaio helped him out along the way. Ōrera.
Kia ora koutou. Ko Joseph tōku ingoa, ko maumau kai te maunga, ko nui aka te awa, taki timu te waka, Ngāti kaununu te iwi, tāne nui arangi te marae. like to thank you all for allowing me to be here today to spread some influence around Te Whare Aisle. My journey started probably about 4 months ago with Nārino. My cousins and my mother actually asked me to go and attend wānanga that was going on, and I was a bit withdrawn, so I was a bit forced into it, but
voluntold.
Yeah, but leading up to it, I had a heavy addiction to drugs for the last 15 years, and it was all I ever knew really, and yeah, I didn't have really time for anything else, but I entered the room, Te Oranga Pūmanawa in Maraenui, and within a minute I was captivated, which made me sit back in my seat and think, oh, what's going on here? I keep thinking to myself, is he a motivational speaker? Has he been to university? I had to ask afterwards, but yeah, no, I was really intrigued, and my journey started there. It was a slow process that just came on really fast. Yeah, overnight I felt change from inside of me. I never had any sort of connection to Māori culture at all. It was hard to explain because something you feel, you don't. It's a feeling that happens. It doesn't happen overnight, but it happens. And attending Te Whare Aisle, I was able to pick out all this trauma in my life that was holding me back from my true potential. And slowly but surely I was given the knowledge and given guidance from Nārino on how to peel back these layers of trauma that I had within me. And yeah, it wasn't overnight, but it was a process. But first thing I kicked was the addiction. Yeah, and that was a hard thing for me to do. Like I slept for about 2 weeks. I woke up and I was rejuvenated, and I was hungry for more oil. I needed the whare to progress where we were going. I was able to find a new connection with my kids. I'm able to communicate with them. I used to be there mentally. I used to be there physically, but not mentally. So I'd be in their presence, but my mind would be elsewhere. And nowadays, I give my 100% to my children. And I've been able to. My journey is. A lot of other people have picked up on it, and people are reaching out to me and asking me how I'm doing it and what's the go. But I've realised that I've had to change myself from within to enable to change others, or not even change others. I just change myself just to grow as a person. Really hard to explain because I came from a really dark place, and I've just been. Brought up with the gang my whole life. I don't know any culture. I didn't know Māori culture. The only culture I knew was my home life, and it was really hard to do. But coming out the other end, it's been a good thing. I wake up every day. I'm able to go motivate myself to get out there. I'm training. I'm eating right. I'm sleeping right, and in doing so, I've attracted all this positivity into my life. And for me, it's bouncing off onto others now. I have so many people approaching me on EIT, and they're wanting me to go out there for talks and around addictions and how I did it. And yeah, it's the best change, the best move I've ever made in my life. And all it's credited to Te Whare Aisle and being able to connect. I'm out there every day now. You might see me on the streets. Gymming it every morning. I'm down on the Marine Parade at the pod. 2 times a day. Yeah, it's hard to explain, but you knew me 4 months ago, you'd be surprised. I had no direction in life. I had nothing going for me, but I've really cleansed myself from the inside out, and I'm healing. Upon healing myself, I'm healing my family, my wider family, my kids. Yeah, it's been a marvellous journey that I'm honoured to be on. Here now, because I need my calling is I need to spread the influence and push it out there to more people, because truly believe it can help a lot more people if they just have to give us the time. When I met him, he just said, give me 10 weeks of your life and I'll give you back 10 years. At the end of the 10 weeks, I felt like I'd been given back 20.
Wow.
So it just doubled up on everything that was going on. But I can't reiterate any more on how life-changing it's been and how I know it can change others' lives too if they're given the opportunity. I'd just like to thank you all today for allowing me to sit in your space and share my knowledge or share my journey with you. Got the butterflies when I walked in here. I was like, I've never been in a place like this. I've never been in this environment before. Yeah, but I'm just happy to tackle anything head on these days, anything positive and any sort of change that I can influence within our community in Napier. I'll be here forever. I don't plan on going anywhere, but I'd just like to thank you all for listening to me today.
Kia ora.
Jason. Kia ora.
This is why I do what I do. And this is only one story. Now I'm sitting here just sharing some emotional tears because the impacts are real. I think this guy he might have only had skin and bone on him when he first walked in the whare, and now he's beefed up and he's got some spirit and soul flying in him. And ultimately that has put flesh and blood flowing through his veins. So to have the example that he's just led to be another figure of importance for his children is going to make a massive impact for Maraenui. This is only one story. This is one story out of the many. And we thought we'd hit the heart of it because he became the heart of the wānanga. The knowledge that was flying out of this fella's mouth, it felt like I was talking to an ancestor hundreds of years ago, because it's within us. We just have to create a space where people can allow us to be us. And when we can fuse that into the community, the presentation beforehand might have a different perception of our people. And somebody like Joseph Fish, they'd be able to say hello to him without feeling intimidated, without feeling scared. We're making that change already. And I'm not a gang member. I've never been around gangs ever in my life before, but they've got the biggest hearts. The biggest hearts. And if I can just allow myself to be able to shape shift one person in motion and the work that we've been doing and grinding so hard for, give us more opportunities and we'll make more changes. I guarantee you that. We've got one more cohort to do. We start at the end of January, 10 weeks out in Waiuhiki. We'll be doing exactly the same thing over that way as well. And hopefully by the end of that report, you guys will have your funding pockets ready to let us shoot for the next 5 years. Because I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. If we're making changes like this, we're ready. Just give us the support. Let's bring in some other funders. Let's bring in some other avenues. Like I remember you, Papa, where was MSD? MSD came in and jumped in and flicked us some funding just to boost us up a little bit. But it's not enough. We need a central place for us so that we can carry on making these changes and shape-shifting the energy within our small communities. Norita, I think that's all I've got to say. The impacts we've made is huge. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for allowing me to come through your space. And thank you for allowing us to be able to present today. I'll hand the final quarter over to TC and then we'll let you get on with your mahi. Ngami.
And we do have, I'm aware of time, apologies for going over, but I think it was worth it to hear the shifts, 1 of 40. But we do have a short video to give you some visual idea of actually what's happened over the last 10 weeks. So if we could get that video played, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Morning. Here we go, up to the big house.
Thank you.
Kia ora. I'm feeling a little bit emotional.
Me too.
Thank you, Teresa and Nārino, and in particular, thank you, Joseph Fish, for coming and sharing with us your personal journey. It is an intimidating environment, and you carried and held yourself to the highest possible standard, and I congratulate you on the journey that you've been through over the last 4 months. I'm very proud of our council for supporting this first ever whānau transformation program, and yes, it's for our Māori people, but having participated in the wānanga myself earlier this year, it is equally for our Pākehā people and our other cultures. I certainly left that wānanga a different person with different learnings and a lot more knowledge. It's great to get an update at the halfway point, and I'm excited that we have the second cohort with our Waiheke community early next year. So I very much look forward to meeting again after that and hearing further outcomes and reports from yourself on how that goes as well. I will open up because I'm sure there's councillors that may have some questions, and I don't want to be time bound with this because it really is far too important to rush through. So I'll open up for councillors who may wish to ask questions or even just share some thoughts. No. Councillor Bogue.
Kia ora, thank you so much. That was indeed a very moving presentation. It's wonderful to see the transformation that's happening in the Nui and with our Napier people. My question is, at the end of the 10 weeks, it's a 10-week program, if there is no further funding, what's the follow-up? How do you keep this moving in the participants who've actually been involved in it for this initial program?
We did kind of prepare for that scenario. So during the process of the 10 weeks, I was building at least 7 or 8 PO. PO would be teachers and mentors that would help carry on the kaupapa if I was not available. So I had a strategy where I designed a mentoring program and allowed these ones to be able to teach and facilitate some of the classes just to leave the wānanga here. Because that was always my intention. And so that PO wānanga has now grown from 8 to 12, and Fish now is a part of that PO wānanga. He's graduated not only from the 10 weeks, but he's been levelled up to become a leader and a light worker within the community. So for us, it's really about saying you have the tools now go and do the real mahi. And like I said, I asked them for 10 weeks of their time. I'll give them 10 years. They've got 10 years to do the work. And so for us, it's really about saying, okay, worst case scenario, yep, that's what it is. But we know you fellas are going to come and back us again.
If I can just add on to that, Councillor Bogue, thank you for the question. For us, that's not an option. So we are doing our very best at this point in time to ensure that over the next 5 years that there is a regional investment approach across government to ensure that this change happens not only in Hawke's Bay, but Hawke's Bay will be the blueprint for the rest of the country. So we very much appreciate that Napier City Council put their hand up boldly and took a risk. Which is paying off. But for us, we are setting our sights on a more regional collective impact approach from agencies to ensure that this carries on and that we are able to scale what we do.
Right. Thank you once again. Oh, sorry, Councillor Tapani, didn't see you out of the corner of my eye there.
Thank you. Just to reiterate your comments earlier on, and just ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa, thank you very much for carrying your Māori into the room this morning and sharing with us a journey that has been hugely impactful, not only on an individual level, Joseph, but also within the relationship with your partner, your children, your home, your community, and now your council. So ngā mihi nui ki a koutou for the lessons you've shared with us and the learnings that we've taken from it. What we do know is that doing the same will get the same results, and we've seen those results in those statistics you've mentioned earlier on, Bees. And I want to acknowledge both the Mayor and this Council for, as you say, Teresa, being bold and taking a chance. You stepped out of nowhere into this room and you asked for our tautoko, and I was humbled by the willingness of this Council to be able to step behind you and stand behind you in this kaupapa. And I really look forward to seeing the impact that this will have on a day-by-day basis within Marae Nui as people take the time to stop and acknowledge one another and share mauri. Those internal changes have massive impacts on our outside community, and it could change the way we see each other. So ngā mihi, thank you very much for coming and sharing this. You've got an advocate here, obviously. So I'll work with our team to see where we can support the kaupapa, but if I can help in any other way outside of this forum in any other space, atawa, available to tautoko. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you for coming and sharing the outcomes that have been achieved so far. It's appreciated to have the feedback. I'm sure the positive outcomes will encourage us to support you in the future. I hope that you'll leave us a copy of the presentation so that we can review it in more time, because I think it's important that we reflect on the outcomes that you've achieved, the way that your influence, Fish, can evolve throughout the Marae Nui community and wider, because we're going through some important times at the moment for our community as a society. There's some significant things happening, and where we have the capacity to significantly influence what's happening at the grassroots level of our community, I think it's really important that we're engaged. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for advancing change.
Kia ora, thank you.
Sorry, just to a reply to your kōrero, thank you. In addition to the presentation, we also have contracted an external evaluator to evaluate the program. So once we have that data and that report, a copy will be sent to the council.
Great. Thank you once again. Good to see you all.
Mami koutou.
Kia ora.
One of the halls there, no?
All right, now that I've gathered myself, Arina just said we might need to bring some tissues for the next time that they're here to present to us. I tend to agree. So moving forward, we are now at announcements by the Mayor, and I do just want to take the opportunity, because of course this is our last council meeting of 2020, and what a year it's been. I don't think any of us could have foreseen, obviously, an international pandemic and then a 1 in 250 or possibly even 280 year flood. And I've been reflecting on it over recent weeks, but reflecting more on the many positives that have also come out of the challenges that we've all faced as a community over this year. And to me, what really shines through is how our community has pulled together and worked together and supported each other to ensure that we cope as best as we can, build resilience, and actually come out of 2020 a stronger community. I did start to write down all the many community organisations who have been involved this year, but there's far too many to name and I didn't want to miss any. So just want to say a thank you to all of you, all of the community organisations. You know who you are and you have gone above and beyond this year, as has our community as a whole. I'm very, very proud to be the Mayor of Ahariri.
And I think that we have definitely strengthened as a community this year with the challenges that we've faced. I also want to acknowledge all of our staff. It's been an incredibly challenging and difficult year for them. We've had 3 chief executives. We've had increased workload due to both the pandemic and the flood, and I know we've got some very tired people who have earned a good Christmas break, and I'm sure that they're counting down the days to be able to go and enjoy some time and some relaxation with their whānau, so thank you all very much. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to thank the councillors. I'm going to start getting emotional again. For me, the support that I've received from the councillors this year has been unwavering. We might not always agree on things, and as we shouldn't, and I appreciate that you do question and challenge me when you need to. But I think collectively as a group, we have done ourselves proud this year. We've worked together. I don't think we could have worked together any better, truth be told. And we've done that to support our staff and to represent our community. And ultimately, that's what we're here to do. And I'm just so incredibly proud of all of you. And yes, just want to say how grateful and thankful I am for the support that you've provided me this year. So, thank you very much. Now moving on to any minor matters not on the agenda. No. Any announcements by management? No. And confirmation of minutes from the ordinary meeting of council held on Thursday the 19th of November. Do I have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Tapani. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Moving on to our formal agenda items. First up, the Hawke's Bay Airport Annual Report 2020. We will be laying this on the table. Unfortunately, Stuart Ainsley and Wendy Harvey were unavailable to come and talk to us today, so we will have them here in the new year to come and talk to their annual report. Our second agenda item is the quarterly report for the 3 months ended 30 September 2020. And
Can I move that we lay that on the table?
Yes, you can. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And yes, moving on to our second report, which is the quarterly report. I've just got to get to the right page on my iPad. And do we have Caroline presenting? No?
Just 1 minute.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, could I just ask a question about an item on the agenda? The reports from the Māori Committee held 9th of December 2020 on page 93 doesn't exist, and I understand that. Not sure why, but the agenda, the minutes haven't been done.
So they'll come through to the next council meeting. Yeah.
the next one. Okay, while we wait for Caroline to come through, we will jump forward to the third agenda item, being the Māori representation extension. Sorry, you can talk to that one. And I'll invite our Chief Executive to talk to this one.
As we have been discussing over a period of time, one of the areas around supporting our Māori committee was around making sure that we had enough people to be able to hold a quorum and to be able to put the meeting on a regular basis. So a number of conversations we had over a period of time about the best way of extending that, and so this is that paper bringing that forward.
Are there any questions?
I just wondered, how are we getting on with that extending process with the extra members who are being recruited?
I can provide an update on that. So we have actually advertised or asked for expressions of interest and received, I think it's 6 applications as at the close-off date. So those applications have now been shared with the Māori Committee, and we'll be looking to progress more towards the end of January next year with the next steps. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, if I can just get clarification, there are currently 3 vacancies representing formal organisations. So will those positions remain on the committee so that if those organisations have available representation, they will be represented?
So the terms of reference was always around those are standing places for our mana whenua partners, so that's why they're there.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. In the terms of reference, there's the ngā matapono or the values, and it's got a, e, I, o, u. Are they placeholders, or is that something I don't understand? Bottom of page 70.
Page 70. So that, just to advise, these are draft terms of reference at the moment as well. So yes, so that essentially it will be that they are placeholders, yes. If there's no further questions, I will put the motion that we approve the amended Māori Committee draft terms of reference to provide for 3 additional community representatives from the Ahariri Māori community. Do I have a mover? You're on a roll today, Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Crown. Did you wish to talk to that?
I actually thought I was seconding, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, no, happy to speak in support of this. It makes sense. Our Māori committee is a really important part of our committee structures, and it's good to have them be reintegrated back into our 6-weekly cycle as well. And I look forward to them growing in strength and strength.
Councillor Crown? No? No? Anyone else wish to speak to the recommendation? No? I will therefore put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Do we have views on? Okay, so we'll go to 4. Yeah. Right, we'll move on to the 4th agenda item, being minutes of joint committees. And you will note we actually have a slight change here. We did used to bring these all through individually, and just to make it a little bit more streamlined, we're now bringing them through as one agenda item. So the minutes that we have before us today are the Hawke's Bay Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee from the 31st of August, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Transport Committee from the 11th of September, and the Clifton to Tongoyo Coastal Hazard Strategy Joint Committee from the 16th of October. I will open up for questions from the councillors who any of the representatives from those various committees are very welcome to answer. So, Councillor Tapani.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a procedural question. How would anyone access these minutes in a public forum if they were interested?
my understanding is they would all be on appropriate websites for whoever is the lead organisation within, and actually they will also be available on our website as part of this meeting agenda. Yeah.
They're in the agenda.
Yes. Yeah. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
While I'm on a roll, Your Honour, just like to speak to a couple of the joint committee minutes in terms of highlights. So just raising from the Coastal Hazards Committee, the committee agreed to engage the help of a retired QC judge, and his name is Raynor Ashore. And he will be helping with a recommendation back to all joint councils on the way we move forward on our contributory fund. So that was great. And also just an update, I just wanted to mention at the Joint Waste Committee as well, we had a really good update from both the Hastings and Napier team on the rollout of all the waste. Obviously Hastings is a bit more recent with their refuse recently, and we also had a really good presentation from Cam Burton from our team on some quite innovative options he's looking at for waste disposal and recycling in Napier. So I look forward to that's going through kind of business case, and I look forward to you seeing that, but more detail in those minutes, but just flagging those as some highlights.
Thank you. If there's no further questions or reports from committee members, I'll ask for a mover and seconder to receive these unconfirmed minutes from the joint committee meetings for the period of the 31st of August to the 10th of December 2020. Thank you, Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Did you wish to speak to? No?
No, I'm satisfied.
No. No one? No. I'll therefore put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We are just going to leave item 2 while Caroline makes her way here. So moving on to the reports and recommendations from the standing committees. And as Councillor Bogue noted earlier, we did not have the Māori Committee minutes being able to be pulled through in time, so that will come through in the next council meeting. So we first up have the reports from the Sustainable Napier Committee held on the 3rd of December. And first off, we have the PGA expansion location of car parking, and I'd invite Councillor Price to give us an update on that one.
Just in brief, the Regional Council sat in their meeting yesterday, and after somewhat a robust debate, they unanimously supported us in our decision for the car park to go on the riverbank over the stop bank. It was a vigorous debate, and presenters were well and truly questioned. But as I say, the result was good in the finish. There's been some great work, and I think just from the council point of view, I'd like to thank Glenn Lucas for the work he's put into this. There's a lot of work, and I probably would have to say there's a lot to be done too. But it was a move in the right direction, so everyone's quite clear that we want this indoor facility and we want the parking that goes with it. There was mention made, which maybe we can look at, in that we need to be real about the amount of car parking we require for these sort of venues. The mention of 400 plus car parks may never be filled, and we should look at other options, like when there's big events, that maybe we bus people in and don't have to have as much parking on the riverbank. But those are things for us to think about. But a good result. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Yes, a very good result. I will read these out individually if... Sorry, Councillor Tapani.
I'm sorry, through you, Worship. I missed the live stream from HBRC yesterday, so fantastic that we got a unanimous support. Were there any conditions applied to their decision? I understand there were some. I'm not too sure what the gambit of them were.
So yeah, there are some conditions which when we apply for consent, would be part of that, and most of them, I would say, fair enough, they would have been conditions anyway, in obtaining the car park over there with protection for if there is a flood and cars end up getting washed away, etc., etc. So I thought they were pretty good conditions and standard conditions that you'd want to get a resource consent.
Thank you, Councillor.
Right, I will read through the reports from the committee. If you want to actually discuss any of them separately or have any questions on them, please just ask me to pause, and we will put that one to the side and treat it independently, but we'll get through the group of them and vote on them collectively as a first point. So obviously, number 1, the Predicary Green Arena expansion, location of car parking. Number 2, report on Napier City Council's drinking water supply implementation audit. Number 3, lease of reserve Palega o Matua Whānau Charitable Trust.
Yes, I'd like to.
Okay, so we'll just keep that one
Okay.
separate. Yeah, thank you. 4, projects update. 5, annual environmental report submission to Hawke's Bay Regional Council, discharge of stormwater to Ahariri Estuary. 6, annual environmental report submission to Hawke's Bay Regional Council, discharge of wastewater into Hawke's Bay. 7, annual environmental report submission to Hawke's Bay Regional Council, discharge into Ahariri Estuary. 8, the Taradell Bridge Club Park Island proposal. 9, Rotary Club of Ahariri 50th Anniversary Project Spriggs Park. And 10, Rotary Club of Terridale 60th Anniversary Project Terridale Park. So do I have a mover and seconder for all but item 3? Thank you, Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Any comments from around the table? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And we will just go back to item 3, lease of reserve. Councillor Bogue.
Yes, I just wanted to update people. I have met with the manager of the Early Childhood Centre a couple of times just to make sure we're entering into a contract, a lease contract with them, that they're comfortable and understand what we're doing. So yesterday we had a telephone conversation with Jenny Martin, which was extremely helpful and very supportive. And we went through the contract sort of generally. If you recall, what happened is that this is an early childhood centre built next to a church on a council reserve. Unwittingly, it wasn't identified as a council reserve until recently. So the idea is that they will pay a lease, an annual lease for 10 years with the right of renewal for 5 years. They're very happy with that. They are going to have to put up their own fence, which they're also quite, prepared to do. And overall, it's going to be not an immediate process. It will have to be notified in the paper, and there will have to be further discussions. But I think that the owners, the manager was very happy with the situation once she sort of had a good look at it. And I think that we will just let it progress. And I think if there's any issues that they want to raise, I'm sure they will. But in the meantime, they see it as a really good resolution and gives them some security on this particular piece of land. So just to report to you, I've got nothing other than I'd like to move the recommendation if needs be, but there's no issues to further explore, and just to thank Jenny Martin for sitting with us and going through, helping the group fully understand what they were entering into.
Thank you for that update, Councillor Bogan, for actually undertaking to ensure that the Trust was happy with the arrangement that had been put in front of them. And yes, happy for you to move that, and I will second it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
She is on the way.
Okay. So we will move on to move on to the reports from the Future Napier Committee held on the 3rd of December. And first up, we do actually have some amendments that were requested through from the committee meeting on our item number 1, the review of the gambling venues policy, and we have Rachel here to talk to this.
Good morning, councillors. Following the Future Napier Committee meeting, this paper for the gambling venues policy is here again today to seek your endorsement of the review process and to sign off on the statement of proposal for consultation. But following the Future Napier Committee, small minor changes were asked to be made from that statement of proposal, and these are on the hub, I understand. So for the gambling venues paper, the small change was changing the word preferred to proposed on page 1 under the heading the proposal, and on page 2 the same change in wording under option 1 in the table. Otherwise the paper is as it came through to the committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion on this paper? And bearing in mind we do have the 4 conflicts of interest as well for this particular one. No?
When do we discuss ultimately?
We can do that now.
So do we need to move the existing motion, or what's the procedure there?
You can put forward a substantive motion.
Through you, Madam Chair, at our last meeting, we agreed with status quo as being our position. I'm going to propose that we alter the cap as a change. I think at the moment, either by the constraints of our proposal, our policy, or by market demand, the existing use is only 298 machines. When I look at the purpose of the policy, the first bullet point says to curb the growth of gambling in the district. So I'm cognizant of the fact that we currently have a gap between what is permitted and what is currently consumed by the market. And I believe that to be consistent with our existing policy, we should move to reduce the cap to 298, but basically leave the rest of the policy as it stands.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that substantive motion? Thank Councillor Tapane. Thank you. So I'll just open that up for questions or further debate from the floor. Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, can somebody please explain to me what that gap is and how it exists?
So the current policy allows for 20 venues. The legislation reduced the number of gaming machines allowed in venues from 18 to 9. So some pre-existing venues have 18 and some have 9. And so depending on the makeup of how your 20 venues operate and how many machines they have in there brings the number of gaming machines that you have. So at the moment we have 20 venues and our cap is 20 venues, so there's no more venues, so there's no more room for gaming machines to go into currently.
So if we're capped at, like you say, at 20 venues, there's no way it can get to 320?
Venues can change and machines can be taken out of venues and put into other venues. Mergers can occur under the policy. So those numbers can fluctuate and change.
So with it fluctuating and changing, this is just a snapshot in time that we currently have?
Yeah, it's been like this for, I would be guessing, but I'm thinking about 18 months at this point.
So just to seek some further clarification on that, my understanding is that we currently are at the maximum number of venues. We can only, if there was a new venue, if a venue closed and there was a new venue, the maximum number of machines they could get through a licence is 9. So I would have thought that under that scenario we're only likely to go down. So we're not
so 298 is essentially the maximum that we can have at this point in time, regardless of any changes in venues that we might have.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Does that provide a little bit further clarification for you, Councillor McGrath?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So essentially, it's impossible for us to end up back at 320 based on the current policy.
Yep.
Yep. Councillor Brown.
I'm interested in the mergers. So at the moment, we can have 2 places with one of 9. If they merge, can they then have 18?
As I understand it, clubs can merge. So you can't have a gaming venue that is only allowed 9 machines to merge with another venue to create 18.
Right.
Under the Act. Under the policy, however, you have existing clubs that have 18 machine licences, and your policy allows for those clubs to merge, and examples are RSAs, and then they could make, if 2 merged, 36 gaming machines on a venue.
Okay. And then follow on for that, if I may, if those 2 clubs merge, then they could retain the same number of machines, but then that would leave another licence free, so another place could open up?
No, they couldn't. Those 2 18 machines, once they merge, become one venue, and there isn't, that second venue is not then available.
Sorry, we currently have 20 venues, and then if 2 of them merge, then we'll have 19, so there's another spot available. Is that
Machines.
for 9 machines? Is that right?
No, we have 20 venues, which is made up of a number of club licences, and those club licences are set as they are. So, as I understand it, if 2 clubs choose to merge, we then don't have another club can't set up another licence.
So the 2 venues. So the merged club then has 2 licences?
2 licences on one premise.
Yeah, okay.
Just a question following up on that line of mergers. What's our amount of discretion in the rules around mergers in this policy? Can we, for instance, not allow mergers?
Sorry?
Can we, for instance, not allow
Yes,
mergers?
absolutely. That's your scope. So under the, your authority under the Gambling Act, is you can consider relocations and mergers. So basically, your mandate is to consider, should we have machines? If we should have them, where should they be? And do we allow venues to move? And do we allow venues to merge?
Councillor Brown,
Yeah.
looks like there might be a question there. It's kind of I'm forming my thinking. I think I'm not sure how it works procedurally, but I'd like to add in there that potentially we look at still allowing, so in option number 4, still allowing the relocations, but not allowing mergers, because I wonder whether we're going to, do we want to, if we've set a cap of 9, generally, do we want someone to then grow to 18?
And I think that's something that we'll consider as part of the actual consultation and hearing process following on from that, rather than making any changes to the current statement of proposal, which is what we're voting on today.
Okay. And then following on from that then, I think with that line of thinking, the wording that is in the consultation document, to me it sets us as having a clear preference. So I'd like to suggest some wording changes, and apologies, my computer that has all my notes on it's decided to do an upgrade. The first line in the proposal, it reads, Council considers that its existing policy, 2017, known as the CAT policy, strikes an appropriate balance between permitting responsible gambling and minimising harm to the community as required by the Acts. I would prefer the wording to say something like, council wants to hear from you if you think it provides an appropriate balance. Because for me, that's us clearly making a stake in our ground, thinking that is what we believe, and I'm not comfortable that it represents all of our views. And then the final line in reasons for the proposal, again, it's about council was looking for your thoughts on if this policy strikes the right balance. So again, asking the question rather than stating our preference.
Okay. So, bearing in mind that we are now proposing that the reduced cap is our proposed option for consultation, which will be an amendment to the statement of proposal. And then, yes, absolutely happy for those other proposed changes to the wording within the statement of proposal if the mover and seconder are supportive of those additional amendments being made.
Yeah. So it's this bit here. That one. I want to hear your feedback.
Happy with those? And who was our seconder? Councillor Tupney, you happy with that? Great. Now, in terms of getting our wording in our recommendation right, I would just like to propose that we actually perhaps need to reword C to acknowledge that we have identified some changes that we'd like made to the statement of proposal prior to it being put out for consultation. So approve the statement of proposal subject to the changes discussed. Will that be adequate to? You want the detail of the changes?
Yeah, I'm not sure I support this yet. I'd like to see it on the board.
Yeah, well, yeah, I want to get the wording up so
Yeah.
that we can see what we're actually voting on.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So if we could just perhaps before we amend the resolution, actually just put some notes up there confirming what the proposed changes are, which is that the reduced cap Okay, that the proposed option for consultation is number 2, reduced cap. And the wording around the existing policy, although that we're now not, this proposal isn't that we're actually putting forward the existing policy as the...
My wording stands.
Yeah.
It's fine with...
Can you just provide us with... Oh, have you...
I've sent it.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Can I just ask you a question of Rachel?
Yeah.
On this again? So option 2 suggests that within the option you can't have relocations?
Yeah, that's just an option that you can include or not include. So option 2 is a reduced cap.
Yep.
And then you can consider removing relocations and mergers from the policy as well.
What a fan of relocations.
Just a follow-up question, that's also an option in one, isn't it? Even
Yeah,
though that wasn't
of
our-
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any of those variables. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to clarify further though, that Councillor Simpson, you're not suggesting that we update the statement of proposal with the option that relocation and mergers are also removed from the policy?
No.
No, it is simply around the reduced cap. So option 2 therefore would need to reflect that it is just the reduced cap that's being proposed.
No, not really.
You did. I have her wording, if that's helpful. Very last night on the statement of proposal.
She's got it in front of her.
Has she got it?
Yeah. I don't know that it's actually, they're going to have to reword it.
Yeah.
This being the proposed option. Yeah.
There's no rush on this.
Anything out there? No. Just get on. Actually, I can't go to the loo, we haven't got a quorum.
I've got to respond.
Yeah. After the end state that it.
Yeah, well, that gets removed. Yeah.
Tend to come to council, stay and cry twice. And cry twice. I have my mark. I've probably got time.
Yeah. Like the rates really. Idea, first up.
Okay. Very good. And can we just actually go back up to that first amendment as well, referring to option 2, reduced cap? We don't want it to retain the suggested within this option that relocation and mergers are also removed from the policy. So that the proposed option for consultation is number 2, reduced cap, with the removal of the suggestion that relocation and mergers are also removed from the policy.
Option 2 of the policy.
And the statement of proposal.
That was option 4, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's just the wording in option 2.
Yes, that's okay with, is that
Second,
okay with the
anyone?
mover and seconder? Yeah.
Aye.
Okay. So the changes that are being proposed in here is that the statement of proposal is approved subject to the following changes, being the proposed option for consultation is number 2, reduced cap, but not to include the suggestion that relocation and mergers are also removed from the policy, and that the first sentence of the proposal section of the statement of proposal should read, Council is reviewing its existing policy 2017, known as a cap policy. We want to know if you think it strikes an appropriate balance. And the final sentence of the reasons for the proposal should read, again, Council want to hear if you think this policy strikes the right balance. We've had confirmation from our mover and seconder that they are happy with those amendments to the motion. So I would now open up to councillors to ask questions or debate.
Is the mover going to speak first?
Oh, I think I've said enough.
I'm happy to speak if the second is reserving there.
Did you wish to speak to the motion now, Councillor Tapani, or would you like to reserve your right to speak to the end of the debate?
I'll reserve to the end.
Okay. I'm yet to be convinced about this change. I'm not speaking against, obviously, the reduction in gambling harm. I'm speaking over what we're talking about, which is, quite frankly, a semantics reduction in the number of our gaming machines. And it seems like semantics because we've heard that it's not a reality that we could hit this cap. You know, I think the tools, I think it's unfortunate that the legislation only gives us a few tools to address gambling harm, and the numbers of gaming machines are one, but also the number of gaming venues, which to me seems, on the information we have, the more appropriate measure of reducing harm, because like we know, proximity has impact, proximity to those vulnerable communities, and that's why you see our current policy removing them from and stopping venues in our vulnerable communities and limiting the number of venues in other communities. Which is where I see the real difference making. And I just want to sow a seed when I was listening to this conversation around the reduction in gaming machines. If we made this decision purely on the facts, we would actually increase our number of gaming machines. And the reason I say that is that we have continually dropped the number of gaming machines, and what have we seen? Increase in gambling harm, increase in gambling spend. So I would like to sow the seed with you that we don't have enough information that would debunk a theory that says the less gaming machines, the more rare, the more scarce, the more people fight to get them, the more they spend. We don't have that information. So what I know is that proximity has an impact. So I like our venue reduction, keeping our venues the same, if not reducing that possibly, and I'm interested in our community's view on that. But we know that reduced machine numbers does not reduce gambling spend, does not reduce gambling harm. And in fact, we know the opposite, that when you reduce gaming machines, you get an increase in gambling spend and gambling harm. And however you want to manage that, the numbers are always difficult to measure gaming harm. So I'm not sure I'm convinced of this. I'm not speaking for and against, and I'm glad no one's asked me yet if I am. But yeah, I would like our community to tell us, this is our current policy and this is what it's achieved. Increase in gambling harm, increase in gambling spend. Tell us how to do it differently, not just do the same thing again and reduce gaming numbers, machine numbers. That's how I feel.
Thank you. Open up for anyone else who would like to. Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, I support Deputy Mayor Brosnan. The facts that we have out there, that's exactly what it indicates. But I'd go a little bit further as well and say that I believe I read something in there that said people will travel up to 5 Ks to use the machines. And Napier being very small, I'm not sure if moving locations will have an impact if people are going to travel. So I'd like to see us stick with what we have currently And again, let the public come out and tell us, let the experts come and tell us, and let us go out and find information in that time as well. And we'll see what's presented to us.
Councillor Brown.
I'm very pro us hearing for the community and hearing more information, which is why I'm very undecided on where I sit and what the right policy is yet, and which is why I suggested the wording that we don't currently have a stake in the ground as to where we think this should fall before we consult. I think we haven't had enough information to be able to make those decisions yet. And just touching on Deputy Mayor Brosnan's point around the number of machines reducing but harm increasing, I think it's, without having more information, I think it's almost a bit of a stretch to be able to correlate those quite so succinctly. There's probably a lot of other societal factors that are going on that are driving up gambling harm rather than just a pure numbers to harm ratio. So yeah, I'm very keen to hear what the public say, but I do support the move to at least signalling a reduced cap, that it feels like we're showing some leadership in a direction towards reducing harm.
Pardon, Madam Mayor, may I speak? I have some doubt about my advice to you around the cap on venues and the effect of clubs merging and what that might mean to cap numbers of venues. I need to go away and double check my gut instinct that what I said to you was the correct thing. And I will do that. I don't think it's material to what's on the table here now, because there is a lot of information to come to you yet, and that can all be part of it for you to make some final decisions. The gambling issues, what creates harm, how harm increases or decreases in societies, is extremely complex, and it is not a straightforward understanding around this addiction, and you can see that in the research, that even the research that we have is not conclusive on either side about how this harm generates itself and how it manifests itself in our communities and in our people. So I think my advice is to pull all that information together as part of the consultation, hold your views on that for now. I will also clarify the venues regarding the club mergers. I just want to make sure that I was right in that assessment for you, and I will send that out to you in written form.
Thank you, Rachel. I'd like to speak in support of the motion that we have before us for a couple of reasons. One, based on the current understanding, which we may get some further clarity around, is that it would appear that 298 is the maximum number of gaming machines we can conceivably have at the moment anyway, so it doesn't make sense to have a cap higher than that. And two, although I agree with Deputy Mayor Brosnan, there does appear to be, some evidence that reduced gaming machines doesn't lead to reduced harm. I personally would not like to see us increase back to 320 gaming machines from where we are at the moment. So I will be speaking in support of the motion that's on the table. And I think, Councillor Brown, you were also speaking in support. You hadn't actually declared a position, Deputy Mayor, but I believe Councillor McGrath spoke against.
I was agreeing with what she said.
She's been very clever and was on the fence.
I'm listening to the debate.
I'll take that stand, more than happy to. Yep.
Councillor Crystal.
I'd like to speak for the recommendation. I think if we can't go any further up, then it makes sense to make at 298. But also, a bit like Councillor Brown said, we don't know why people are spending more, even if there's less machines. But there is that society of people who think
that their life could be better if they made more money, and they see that as a route to do it. So we don't know, and I think that we are sending a signal that we don't want any more machines here. So I'm speaking in favour.
Thank you. We've had 3 speak in support, so I'll open up if there's anybody else that would like to speak against the current motion that we have in front of us.
It possibly isn't very clear in the first one, so we want to know if you think, and because we've now changed, that should probably say the reduced cap policy strikes. So
Can you just...
and then down in the text, we want to know if you think the reduced cap policy strikes an appropriate balance.
Okay, thank you. If there's no one else wishing to speak to the motion, I will put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Against.
It was, the only against was Councillor McGrath. All others were aye, and then we have our conflicts. Carried. Thank you. Good discussion.
We can get it.
Yeah, we'll just got
We
another
can
couple of
get it
papers
back
under this committee, and then we'll call you up.
The next meeting we might want more meetings.
Well, there's 3 pages, mate. There were 3 pages, so the mayor was interested at the same time.
Oh, so you didn't get to talk.
It's all right, we don't have the time, we've only got today.
I'm struggling with my iPad today.
We'll be eating Christmas.
I think I need to probably which makes life a bit easier.
Strict standing orders.
So moving on to the remaining 2 papers from the Future Napier Committee held on the 3rd of December, being the review of location of approved psychoactive product sales points policy. Again, there was just a slight amendment in terms of making the map clearer.
I have a question on the map.
Yes, great.
So I'm assuming the red area is the area they're allowed in, is that right?
That's right.
So considering they're supposed to be away from churches, there's 2 churches right next to that are... So we've got the Methodist Church on Clive Square and the Catholic Church on the corner of Munro and Station Street. So that doesn't comply with what we're saying.
Sorry, this is the zone that they can be in, and then they must be 100 metres away
from those.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And if those churches moved or anything, if those churches moved, then, you know, it's basically saying you want them only to be in this red zoned area.
Okay. Councillor Tapani.
Questions just popped into my head, Rachel, and I'm hoping background question. So the churches have a specific role within community, so I can understand why they're in the policy. Does our civic centre fall under the same sort of broad definition of that type of public space, or because it's not expressly mentioned, it's just not included?
Yeah, I think this is quite interesting in that the previous policy used the language, you know, kindergartens, early childcare centres, schools, places of worship as specific places. We've amended the current policy and we're proposing that we change the wording to be, no, I've got it wrong here, here it is, to vulnerable and sensitive sections of our community, such as, so those places of worship, family focus and child focus areas, those sorts of are just leaders' examples now, rather than being prescriptive as in it must be places of worship, it must be childcare centres, things like that. So I think this policy gives council a lot more discretion, if you like, to consider what is a vulnerable and sensitive section of our community where those people congregate. And
Thank
we
you.
could apply that on a case by case.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? I think we're back in, eh?
You're back in.
Yeah. So with the Clive Square Gardens, what would you call them?
Yes, that would be a reserve space, and that might be something you wanted to either consider specifically in the policy, or you apply, like I say, on a more material basis if a application came forward to council.
Okay.
Councillor Brown.
Just on that, because that was my thinking as well, Councillor Price. I think it's fair to say that
Ahariri.
our reserve land is very unlikely to move, whereas a church is possibly more likely to move. So I wonder if it would be worth just moving it 100 metres from the Clive Square and the reserve on the Marine Parade foreshore there. So just moving those boundaries rather than having it as the secondary layer in the policy that they have to be 100 metres from those spaces.
You're saying that the wording would be, 100 metres of any existing area where vulnerable sensitive sections of our community congregate, and Clive Square and...
No, so not so much. So I was thinking originally we could say and reserves in there, but if it's only within this area of the map, seen as the reserve space is very likely, not likely to move, we could just move the edges of that by the 100 metres. So move it to the other side of Hastings Street and move it east by approximately 100 metres. Far right corner.
So this references the inner city commercial zone within the district plan.
Right.
Yeah. You might be, like I say, better to include reserve spaces as an example, and then you can apply it or not, depending. Anything in that inner city commercial zone could change, and that a place could eventuate in that inner city commercial zone where sensitive or vulnerable people congregate, and it's not listed, but at that time you make a judgment that is a place which we think, even if it's on a temporary basis, that those people congregate, and we don't want that shop there. So I think this policy wording gives you the scope to do that if you wish. If you wanted to double down on that, you could put the reserves spaces into the examples that you'd set.
Okay.
Bearing in mind that this is very hypothetical, I mean, it's, I'm speaking from my own view, I cannot see us or anywhere in New Zealand having to consider these substances being approved by the Ministry of Health.
Can I ask a question? Rachel, just a question. If a substance was to be approved, what's our ability to pull this in and customise, I suppose, our policy to the issue we see at the day? It's kind of hard to make something that might capture all hypothetically. Depending on resources, there's nothing stopping you from reviewing your policy whenever you feel it's important to do so. The deadlines on it are just the minimum time of that you're allowed to leave it without review.
And just further to that, I think that the wording that's proposed in here does allow us and give us the ability to consider that a reserve area is an area where vulnerable or sensitive sections of our community congregate. So I think that we are covered in the current wording without trying to individually capture every potential type of vulnerable or sensitive section where our community would congregate.
Yeah. I've just got a question around the process. So if a substance was approved and someone applied to us for a licence, does that come back to us to decide, or is that at the officer level and they work off the policy that we've already developed?
It comes back to council.
Okay, perfect.
Councillor Bogue?
It just seems so, I don't know, superfluous, this whole policy really, because are there any approved psychoactive products being sold anywhere in New Zealand?
No, they're not. I think what you've got here is a legislative sort of overlap where new legislation has come in that has, taken out those substances largely in New Zealand, and but the requirement for councils to still have a policy remains. So we are doing what's required of us under that legislation, but really, that hasn't just been caught up with.
Yeah. Could I make a suggestion, perhaps when the Local Government New Zealand conference is on next year, that there be a remit go to remove this legal requirement, since I can't see in the future, unless somebody else has got other ideas, of us having any approved psychoactive products. There's lots of illegal psychoactive products being sold, there's no doubt about that, but it must be 5, 6 or more years since we sold anywhere in New Zealand, from what I understand, unless they're sold online. It just seems.
Look,
like
I don't know why that work by the Ministry of Justice isn't done. It would be a very minor piece of work for them to prioritise. There is other legislative updates that are probably, beyond their work plan that more than this. I don't think a remit would be successful, sadly. I do think that there is anomalies like this all through the law, and it takes a while for the policy work to catch up with that. Having said that, though, science is always evolving, and who knows if somewhere there is a substance that is created that somehow meets the requirements and it does get approved. At least we've got a policy to cover ourselves for the meantime.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to basically say what the officer has said, that if something does become available, we need to have the safety net that we have a policy in place, and I suggest that the policy has to have a reasonable amount of discretion so it allows us to actually make the decision. So I think what we've currently got before us is very appropriate.
Thank you. Are there any further questions of Rachel? Okay. So we haven't actually put forward any changes, thank you very much, Rachel, to the recommendation that has come through from future Napier committees. So I would also like to just put the resource consent activity update on the table for us to move these together. Was there anything from that item 3, resource consent activity update, that anyone had any questions or no? So do I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan and Councillor Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And now we will go back to item 2. Caroline's been waiting very patiently for the quarterly report through to 30th of September 2020.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
So for the first quarter year to date, can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me? Yeah. The first quarter year to date, the net operating deficit of 1.1 million is $3 million favourable to the budgeted deficit of 4.1 million. The total revenue for the first quarter year to date is 3.2 million favourable to budget, and total expenditure is 186,000 unfavourable to budget. Some of the main drivers for the favourable result to budget are financial and development contributions being above budget due to timing of revenue allocated ahead of schedule. Our rates revenue was lower by 330,000 than budget, but that was a timing issue with receiving the Crown rates rebate revenue. Finance revenue is 200,000 above budget. That's due to more funds being invested than we had anticipated. Subsidies and grants are higher than budgeted, and that's a timing issue around the NZTA subsidised works undertaken. And other revenue is 1.8 million higher than budget, and that's solely attributed to the higher than expected revenue from Kennedy Park, aquarium and building consents. Our labour costs are 300,000 lower than budget due to vacancies across the organisation, and our other operating expenditure is 640,000 above budget, mainly due to the costs related to increased building consent volumes and lower than planned recharging of in-house labour due to vacancies. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Open for questions. Easy. Do I have a mover and seconder for, thank you, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Crown? Did you wish to speak to that, Councillor Taylor?
Yes, just very briefly, I think we were all expecting in the first quarter a lot of doom and gloom, and I'd just like to think that there was a lot more positive in that quarterly report than we expected, and let's hope that continues through the remainder of the year.
Agree completely. Councillor Crown. Did anyone else wish to speak to the recommendation? No. I'll put that then. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Caroline. And moving through to our reports under Delegated Authority. First, we have the tenders let. Do we have any questions before I ask for a mover and seconder? And we may actually do documents executed under seal in the same motion if, again, we don't have any. Are you just moving that, Councillor Tapani? Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Crystal. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Do I have a mover and seconder to go into public excluded? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan and Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And we'll have a short 5-minute break.